Today, I wanted to talk about a semi-famous local politician we have here up in Washington by the name of Tim Eyman. Most of you are probably familiar with him with his $30 car tab initiatives. It's something he's been filing since about 1999 or so. He just filed another one in 2019, and that's really how I found out more about him. And he's had a pretty interesting career over the past now 2 decades that I think is just kind of fun to dig into as a case study, especially since he's not well known outside of Washington, even as somebody who's been here for the last 5 years. I had no idea he existed until that $30 card tab initiative last year, and then the opposition to that started playing ads with his name on it and things like that. I don't want to delve too far into his personal history. Some minor background information, though. He grew up in Yakima, Washington, and graduated from WSU in 1988 with a business management degree. He went on to create a mail order business selling engraved watches to Greek organizations that he then slowly backed away from as he became more involved politically. As he became more involved in politics, he became known as a professional initiative filer. He focused on tax and transportation issues. He's even received the Ronald Reagan Award from a conservative PAC regarding his work on the 1999 $30 car tab initiative that he started. His peak can be considered 2012 when he sponsored 25 different initiatives that year. Now, here's where it starts to get juicy. He established a PAC called Permanent Offense after the success of his first initiative, the 1999 $30 car tabs that we mentioned. Several years later, in 2002, it was then reported that he paid himself almost $165,000 from donations meant for the initiative. The Washington State Public Disclosure Commission, which is basically our state version of the Federal Election Commission, then charged him with diverting almost $250,000 in funds. He initially denied the charges, but later admitted wrongdoing and further agreed to a settlement with the state attorney general. In the agreement, it established a $50,000 fine and a lifetime ban from handling any PAC's financial accounts. That was his first scandal, and then things quieted down for a few years until 2006. There was a dispute over the number of signatures he gathered for another $30 car tab initiative. He claimed to have submitted a touch over 300,000 signatures. On the drop off, he made the receptionist date stamp a receipt marking 300,353 signatures. There ended up being a discrepancy of over 34,000 signatures upon the Secretary of State's accounting. Mr. Eyman charged the Secretary's office of gross incompetence, sabotage, and blatant dishonesty. His receipt was deemed invalid, and he did not make copies of the signatures so he could independently verify them. He only tallied and weighed the boxes before submitting them to the office. The Secretary of State's own documentation showed that a sample was taken of 4% of all of the signatures. Of that sample, nearly 18% were invalid. Therefore, the initiative failed to reach the threshold to go to ballot, and a later full accounting revealed that it did in fact fail to meet the threshold for the number of required signatures. A month later, to add to the public spectacle, another Washington citizen started an initiative asking for a public poll on Mr. Eyman. The initiative stated, "The citizens of the state of Washington do hereby proclaim that Tim Eyman is a horse's ass." It was ultimately blocked by a Thurston County judge. This is a pretty difficult situation for me personally. There's a lot of hearsay and things that could have caused a signature count discrepancy that aren't malicious on either side. And I think, in all fairness to both parties, it was either an honest mistake or bad communication that led to this escalating further than it needed to. Between 2006 and 2019, it appears he really kept out of the limelight. He continued to file multiple tax and transportation initiatives each year and work on his political action committees with no major incidents. In early 2019, he was quickly thrown back into the spotlight when he was accused of stealing a $70 chair from an Office Depot in Lacey, Washington. Charges were filed by the Lacey police for one count of theft. He initially released a statement that the incident was a mistake and he was being harassed by the state government. His position is that he went back into the store to pay for it while he was picking up several $100s worth of printing equipment, and it was all a misunderstanding. He claims he was being harassed by the state government in relation to his repetitive filings and initiatives that he's done over the years. In his statement, he had a really interesting paragraph that I think is part of a broader trend that's emerged in politics over the last several years. The quote reads, "It's gratifying to learn that the legacy media is not dead. I find it encouraging that they can still speak loudly and with one voice when they want to. Thank goodness it wasn't over things like Inslee's tax hikes or politicians' massive salary bonuses. No, it was about me and a $70 chair. I have several things that I want to unpack from this part of his statement. One, it's a sly hit at the media for being biased. He has more grace about it than most people these days, but it reads in a very similar way to saying that the media is fake or crooked. Two, it's a misdirection to other people's perceived misdeeds and wrongdoings in an attempt to minimize his own behavior. This is not the appropriate forum to air that. Further, he provides no data to back up his claims, although they are at least verifiable if you want to dig into public records and government documents yourself. Three, he continues to play the victim by detailing other grievances he has with the state's handling of other issues, such as his Chapter 11 bankruptcy, that are neither here nor there. The best part of this whole saga is there's security footage that Office Depot released that I've linked below in the description. It's very clear that he waits around for an opening after the other gentleman in the dark shirt walks into the store. He then proceeds to roll the chair out. And as for his excuse, who's ever walked something to their car and then paid for it? Nobody. It's not the known way to purchase goods in this country. You buy it first, then you remove it from the premises. There's no reason that it should have gone to his car before payment. Even if you're buying mulch at Home Depot, you're going to pay for it, and then they're going to load it into your car. And Tim, I doubt you're ever going to watch this, but if you do, I lost a lot of respect for you over this one. I don't care about the chair. I care that you disgraced yourself by not taking ownership for your actions. If you had just said, yeah, I stole it. How can I make this right, or how can I fix it? It would have demonstrated that you're a decent person who had a temporary lapse in judgment. Instead, you chose to whine and whinge about it like a child caught with their hand in the cookie jar. That's not a man I want to be my own role model, and it makes me hesitant to back you in any of your future political endeavors. The office chair incident, although widely entertaining, is just a distraction compared to the ongoing scandal he's currently also involved in. It appears he's gone full circle and repeated his own history of political finance violations. An investigation by the Public Disclosure Commission in 2015 reviewed Eyman's use of donations from the 2012 initiative cycle. The commission determined there was a discrepancy. Remember how he sponsored 25 different initiatives that year? The gist of what happened is he used money raised for one initiative to fund another one, basically swapping money out from what original donors had intended it be used for. In March of 2017, Attorney General Bob Ferguson announced a $2.1 million lawsuit against him. There was to be $1.8 million in penalties to himself and his political group, a further $308,000 be returned by Eyman himself, and a ban from participating in future political campaigns. The Attorney General's position is that Eyman created an elaborate web of unlawful financial transactions. Eyman's attorney, on the other hand, states that it centers around just two transactions and whether they should or should not have been reported at the time. He also accuses the Attorney General of trying to stifle Eyman's political activism by seeking to bar him from future political campaigns. At this point, I would like to state I do agree with Eyman's attorney. The Attorney General is potentially trying to stifle his political activism by barring his future participation. On the other hand, this is potentially strike two. Eyman doesn't necessarily have the right to a third strike, and these aren't trivial sums of money that are being moved around. With that being said, the trial is still ongoing. The court case eventually reached a standstill over documents requested by the prosecution. Eyman refused to produce them and claimed the state government was trying to use discovery to find more information about his political groups and his actions unrelated to these events. Ultimately, he decided to withhold documents. He was held in contempt of court for almost a year and a half and racked up over $200,000 in fines. A judge finally ordered him to release these documents in September of 2019, and the documents specifically relate to about $800,000 in fundraising activity dating all the way back to 2012. At the time, Eyman was quoted as saying the case is a political jihad against me and my family. The case is still ongoing and no conclusions are expected soon. Calling it a political jihad is not only offensive and inflammatory, but a continued distraction from the real issue at hand. Was there a misuse of donations? Did Eyman operate in bad faith to his donors by conducting these financial transactions? We'll have to wait and see what the court decides. It's fair to say that Mr. Eyman has had his ups and downs in the political arena over the past 2 decades he's been involved with state politics. Most recently, he's decided to announce a campaign for the 2020 governor's race where he'll run as an independent. The chairman of the Washington State Republican Party was quoted as saying, "Voters are fed up of being overtaxed and are fed up with not being listened to. And in that process, we'll see if they're willing to overlook Eyman's flaws." At this time, the state's Republican Party is not endorsing him as a candidate. With an uncertain future ahead of him, I have more questions now than I did before. Is he being targeted by the Washington state government? Is he truly an anti-tax crusader who's fighting the jihad of leftist politics that have taken over the Pacific Northwest? Is he a modern-day knight of chivalry or another court jester in our modern political landscape? Thank you for joining me today as I've discussed one of the more interesting and polarizing politicians in Washington state today. All sources have been linked in the description below. If you have a request for a local politician you would like to learn more about, please leave their name in the comments section. Thanks again for watching.